Okay, so welcome back to the wooden block stat video. This is part two, and in part two, what I'm going to do is work on creating a graph, a graph to show how many blocks were in a set range of values. I can't create a graph for every single value, but we'll create a range and say, okay, how many blocks were between, say, 0.75 and 0.755. So we're going to create a little range. So to do that, let's make a table where we begin to define our ranges. And so I'm going to have a low value. I'll just call it low. So maybe if you want to have the same cell references and same, column and row numbers, you might want to start with me in D16. Okay, so I'm going to have kind of the low end and the high end of a range, and then I'll just title the range and then quantity. Those would be our column headers, and we're going to populate this. And right here, I'll put a frequency table. Okay, so the lowest value in our data set from right here was 0.48, but that I know is an outlier. A value that we're going to ignore. So I'm just going to start at like 0.7000. And notice that it's not showing the 4 digits. That's not a big deal. But if you want, on the Home tab in the number panel, you have these buttons right here where you can increase the number of decimals showing or decrease. And so if I want to go ahead and show 4 place values, I can do that. And I'm going to go up in increments of, adding 0.025 basically. So like the next range will start at 0.725, and the next one will be at 0.750, and then 0.775, and then, let's see, am I doing that the way I wanted? No. Okay, this will be, so I went up by 25 thousandths. I want to go up by 25 ten thousandths. So I'm going to do 0.7025 and then 0.7050 and then 0.7075. The reason why I want to make small increments, I definitely want to get ranges so that I can have more numbers that just fall into a bucket instead of being all these individual counts. But I also want them to be kind of smaller increments so we can see some variation. We can see the spread as we create a table. I think that'll make sense as we go. Okay, and then the high value, if this is going to be at 0.7025, this one's going to be 1/10,000th smaller, 0.7024. And so anything between 0.7 and 0.7024, we'll count those, and that'll be a range, one range. And then the next one, we'll stop just shy of this value, this next low. So this will be 0.7049. Okay, like that. And I'm going to highlight all these. Yep, I want 4 decimals placed showing. Okay, so I can sit here and type this up and take a long time to do it. Okay, but I've got a little bit quicker way. We can create a formula. Okay, so I started with this number right here, right? The 0.700. And if I know that every time this value to the right is going to be plus the same increase, which in this case, to go from 0.7000 to 0.7024, I would add 0.0024, right? Well, I can write a formula, so I'm going to say equal, so it's a formula. I'm going to say I want to add the cell to my left, so plus, add to that 0.0024, and I get the same thing. And when I pull that down, okay, if you didn't know this, you can take a formula and you can copy it down. So by grabbing this little box and pulling down, that formula will be applied over and over again. And my cell reference, while it was D17 here, Excel automatically changes it when I pull the formula down to be D18 on the next one. Okay, that's because when I reference a cell, just a plain reference to a cell, just with its name, is a relative cell reference. And so while I refer to D17, while here, Excel also says, you really referred to the cell to your left. And so when you pull the formula down to the next cell, it assumes that you want to use that formula in the same relative way, that, hey, you would like to take the cell to your left, which is now D18, and add that value 0.0024. Okay, so that takes care of this column, except I'm going to need these values to go up. So how can I write a formula for these? Well, for the first one I can't. I've got to have a starting value. But each value underneath it was really going to be just 1/10,000th bigger than that value, the previous high. So I can write a formula right here, equal, and I can take the previous high, and I can say plus 0.0001. So I want to make that 24 become a 25. There you go. Notice that changed, but it's it's the same values. So now if I pull that down, let's go ahead and pull it to here. Okay, you notice that these are populating, that those are getting fixed, and I can now grab both of these formulas and so highlight both cells, and I can pull both down at the same time. And let's see, we're going to keep pulling until we are in like the 0.8 range. This is bigger than probably it needs to be, but we'll deal with maybe truncating what data we actually want to graph in a little bit. Okay, so there you go. That was a shortcut way to fill out all these numbers without having to sit here and type that in manually. Imagine how long that would take to sit there and type all those in. Okay, if you need to see the formulas again, let me click on the formula bar. Okay, or this cell, and you can look up here in the formula bar. So the first low was just a number, 0.7. The high was taking the cell to my left, D17, that first low, and plus 0.0024. In the next row, instead of having to type these in, now I'm just using addition formulas. So the next low is the previous high. So I took E17 right here. If I even click on this, you'll see that green is what I'm selected and what shows up in the formula bar, but any cell that I referenced then highlights, so that's nice. So you can see that this cell was this previous high plus that 0.0001. And this again is the cell to my left. So once you've got that filled out, you've got four numbers showing. You can take this second row, grab this little square, click and hold, and drag down. And those are going to pull down and populate. Okay, next is a little trick to show you how to communicate the range. How to actually to create one cell, and this is really for creating the graph later, but I want one cell that actually contains and communicates the range, the low to the high. All right, and so to do that, we're going to hit the equal sign. I want the low listed, so I'm going to hit that cell. Notice it populates. And then I'm going to use the and sign. And. Okay, and you can combine this contents of more than one cell with and. You can also add in here, you can combine in other text. You have to put it in quotes. So I'm going to say take the value D17 and then combine it. So with something I'm going to type manually. So quote, I want a space, a hyphen, and a space. End quote. Okay, so I'm going to combine the value 0.7 with a space, a hyphen, a space, and then on the other end of that hyphen we want to put the high value. So I need another and sign. I'm going to combine a third element, and the high now selects. I will hit enter, and it's going to display. Now it's going to use the least number of decimals you can here, and I don't have a quick solution for that, so we're just going to let it go. Okay, and just take it like that. And now if I copy that formula down, it's going to fill those in. You can make that column a little wider. Okay, so notice the range is 0.7 to 0.0724. So you can click on the cell and see what you had typed in. I basically combined D17 and this text string of space hyphen space, quotes,
Pardon the interruption. Tracy McKinney, please report to the front conference room. Thank you.
and combined the value E17. So the low and the high, and I sandwiched in the middle there the space hyphen space. So we copy that down. And this is something weird that's happened. It's happening over here. It's reading, you can see this range was 0.72 to 0.7239999, somewhere in here. I don't know why, because we put in, a very finite number of decimal points, but it's wanting to, get to these really small values as if it didn't quite make it to 0.7224. So the value the very first one that has that, I would just come into this table and manually type it in. So 0.7224, 0.7224. And it was only that one that was doing it until you get down to here, and it's the first one. It sets off a chain reaction. So we're going to manually type on that first value, 0.7475, was that it? Or no, yeah, 7, that's right, 0.7475. Okay, fixed it all the way down to here, this 0.7749, 0.7749. Yours are going to be different numbers that you might need to fix. And then down here, the first one, the 0.8. There you go. Okay, so you might have a few to fix just to clean that up. So now I have a table where I've got my lows listed, my highs listed, my range communicated, and now I want to go through and count. This range is really just more of a text field for me to put into my chart, my graph, but I need to individually call out the lows and the highs to create a formula where the formula will go into my data set and count how many values were in this range. And you do it as a kind of as two conditions. We're going to check two things. We want to count if a number is greater than or equal to the low, and at the same time less than or equal to this. So it has to satisfy two arguments, being bigger than this one and smaller or equal to this one. And if it satisfies both conditions, it'll count it. Okay, so we're going to, right here in a formula, we'll write it one time and then we'll get to pull it down again. And actually, let's go down because we might not even have any numbers here, and so you might think the formula is not working. So let's kind of come down in here into right around that 0.75. We know we've got values that are close to being the goal, which was 3/4 of an inch for those cubes. So let's start here, and you can actually pull formulas up and down. All right, I want to see the top of my data set because I'm going to have to go back there. Okay, so this formula is going to be equal. It's a count formula, and there's different count formulas. If you start to type in the word count, you see different ones. And we want to do a count ifs, plural. Count if is like count if something is true, you get to write a condition. Count ifs would be if I have multiple conditions, and I do. I want to check, am I greater than or equal to the low, and am I also less than or equal to the high? And so I have two different arguments that I would like to write. So I'll use this count ifs, open parenthesis, and Excel is even letting me see the general thing that needs to go in here. Okay, it doesn't really explain the perfect syntax of how to type, but I will help you with that. So first you need to select the criteria range, which is really our data set. Okay, what range of values is going to have to meet some criteria, and then you use a comma, and then after that you write an expression that represents the criteria. What are you wanting Excel to check for? So first let's select our data set. So I'm going to choose the first one, hold down Shift Control, hit the down arrow, okay, and that just selected the whole data set. I'm going to come up to my formula bar. I'm not going to worry about my graphics window having scrolled down to the bottom at this point. Actually, maybe I will. So I'm going to grab this, scroll back up, because you will want to see those lows and highs next to it. Okay, so I scrolled back up. Here's the cell I'm in. Okay, so right here I'm going to type in the formula bar, comma, and now I have to write a condition. I want to be greater than or equal to. I have to put this in quotes though. So I'm going to do a quote greater than an equal sign. That means greater than or equal to. And close the quote. So I now have to define what am I going to be greater than or equal to. I could manually type a number. If you were going to do that, you would actually put it inside the quotes. But if you're going to reference a cell, then Excel needs you to have the inequality, okay, in the quotes, and then you hit the outside of the quotes, you hit and your cell. So I'd like to be bigger than or equal to the low, and that's it. But I used count ifs, which means I now can create a second criteria. My range is going to be the same range, so I'm going to put comma, and you repeat what we just did. We select the range all over again. Okay, I can actually copy and paste from right here. I can go select it. So right in here, I can highlight that, and I can Control C copy and put it right here again, Control V paste. Okay, so I'm going to call on the exact same range. This time, so quotes, comma. First, we got to separate the range from the criteria. So a comma when we're done with the range. And then this time, so the criteria, in quotes, I want to be less than or equal to, end the quote, and a cell. So I want to be less than or equal to the high. All right, and then there's one thing about this formula that's not great. We're going to come back and fix it, but since you're new to all this, I want to show you, the effects of me not putting something in here. And I'll hit and. Okay, so this formula, this cell, is counting all these numbers it's going through, and it's finding any number that was greater than or equal to 0.7525 and at the same time less than that. If I grab and copy that formula, it appears to be working, but something is happening. Now I'm going to pull it up and you'll see. Here, this was our original. I'm going to mark that just so you know if you forget. I'm going to pull this up to the top. Okay, and that seems wrong. Well, let me click on the original once, and then I'll click on the formula bar, and you notice that the cells that are being referenced in that play highlighted. So I can see my criteria referenced, the red cell, the purple cell, and my range is highlighted. Okay, well let's go up here and see what's going on. Okay, the low and the high are referenced, which is good. But over here, my range is not starting at the top, it went up. Let's look at the 83. Let's go one above it. So I'm going to click on the 54, click on the formula bar. Okay, so what's happening is that these relative cell references of like calling on D37 and E37, Excel knows, hey, as you copy the formula up, what you really wanted me to do is use for your low, the cell 3 to the left. And for the high, you wanted me to go 2 to the left. And as I pull this up, I adjust accordingly. So notice it used these two when I pulled it up instead of using the original two. So that's a good thing. What's not a good thing is that as I'm copying this formula up, my data set is not moving. I want to reference the entire data set from the beginning to the end each time. But it thinks that it also needs to relatively adjust these cells. And so you notice it went up to A15 instead of starting at A16. And if I go to the next one, so let's go to 13, you'll notice that it went up 2. It's starting right here. So we want to stop that from happening. So let's go back to our original. And what do I type in here to tell Excel that this range needs to not change? Okay, I want that, even as I copy my formula up or down, I need to always refer to very specifically A16 to A388, but I still want to take advantage of just that copy feature. If you highlight the range right here, the keyboard shortcut is F4, okay? Or manually you can type in what happened. Putting a $ in front of a column or a row number, either one, the column header or the row number, you can do just one without, you don't have to do both, but the F4 will do both. It locks that cell reference in so that as you copy, if you have a $ in front, the column will not change. If you put a $ in front of the number, the row will not change. What we really wanted is the row, because as I'm dragging up and down, the tendency is for it to move, the data set to move up and down with me, which is the row numbers changing, not the columns. So I don't need the $ in front of the A's, but they don't hurt either. So the shortcut is to highlight and hit F4. The manual way would be to go in and to put a $ in front of, really for me, the row numbers. So I'll do it one way there and one way here. Now I'm going to hit enter. And now if I drag this 83 up, look at that. I didn't get the reason why those were errors is because it couldn't even move that data set up any further. Okay, so now let's just go up to like the 13, go up 2, click on this. Notice that the data set is starting right where it's supposed to. Okay, so let's copy this down. Nope. Okay, so I obviously made my frequency table much bigger than it needed to be. You can see pretty much all the data is kind of right in here. And so when we go to create a graph, we don't need to graph all these different ranges. I might start with where that 1 is and kind of end with that 1. And so basically right here, anything that is outside of that, I'm going to consider. You can copy all this down. I thought somebody had some values that were, oh, yep, there you go. So I pulled that down even further. I know somebody had typed in a big number 10 times, that we definitely didn't get. I could tell that that student had not really measured their wooden blocks. So I don't want to graph that. That's an outlier. And I'm pretty sure that this here was an outlier, or the caliper was not calibrated, not zeroed or something. Okay, so the last thing here is to make a table. And we want 2 columns of information. We want the range name and we want the quantity. And so right here is a good little set of data for us to graph. I've got the names and I've got the amounts. And so we're going to make a little bar graph with that. So I'm going to go to Insert, and I can actually choose Recommended Charts, and it'll recommend charts based on the data selection. So it kind of sees that I only have 2 columns and kind of can start to understand what I might want to graph. So if you click on that, it actually suggests the very first one I wanted. I wanted the bar, a histogram, but I want it to be columns that are vertical instead of to the side like that. That's what I'd prefer. And you can see down below each bar has been labeled with the range. And so this is a frequency table or frequency graph that we can see within a certain range how many blocks fell into that. The one thing is that my ranges are all the same size. Your data would be kind of misinterpreted if you had ranges that were bigger than others. Okay, and so we don't want ranges that are bigger than others, and we kept our ranges all exactly the same size. Okay, so I'm just going to hit OK on that one, and it creates a graph for you. And we can edit this graph a little bit now. But for right now, we'll let it stay like that because that was probably enough information for one video. You can resize it a little bit, move that around, and at that point you've got a good, completed a pretty good activity for an introduction to Excel. Good job.